Peace, love and light, and welcome to the Gnostic Catholic Union, where today we're going to be discussing the Albigensian crusade. Now, when people hear the word crusade, they usually think of Christian knights in the desert fighting to reclaim the Holy Lands, or they think of Christians versus Muslims. They don't usually think of the term crusade applying to a genocide of millions of people committed by the Roman Catholic Church against a pacifist group of Christians called the Cathar. Now, the Cathar were a Gnostic Christian dualist sect, believing in salvation was obtained through spiritual knowledge and a direct personal spiritual relationship with God, and the rejection of the material world and all its worldly desires. They were dualist in the sense of believing in two gods. They believed that the false evil God created the material world, and the true, loving, perfect God created the spirit and the spiritual realm. Now, the Cathar were also pacifist, but because they believed in a personal spiritual relationship with God was open for all humanity, they did not believe that one man could speak for all of Christendom, let alone control how people would seek their faith. So because of this, they would reject the Pope's authority, and they would also view the Pope as being influenced by Satan and that Satan corrupt the text. So because of this, they would earn the wrath of the Roman Catholic Church, who in turn would persecute the Cathar, and the Pope himself would order a crusade. Throughout Christendom, the secular powers regarded heresy as treason and strictly forbade it. So even if not yet publicly declared a heresy, Catharism was still considered an illegal religion, and any Cathar would be considered a criminal and a heretic. Any religious diversity when involving Christianity was considered heresy and treason. Unique developments, trade, art, religious architecture, and pilgrimages in southern France would make Languedoc a fertile place for the growth and popularity of Catharism. The most powerful lord in the area was Raymond VI, the Count of Toulouse, who in name held lands in France, England, Aragon, and lands given to him by the German Emperor. These lands would have been mostly outside of his control, as regional barons and lords that were virtually independent were allowed to rule their lands, oftentimes inherited independently, mostly just paying taxes and be willing and ready to supply their count with soldiers if he called upon them. Vassalage in southern France was weak compared to northern France, England and Spain, and as a result, private warfare between local nobility was common, and law and order was constantly broken, making heresy of little concern or near impossible to suppress. Although Catharism was diverse in beliefs, culture, and social status, due to its growing popularity, their numbers were strong amongst the nobility in southern France. The fiercely independent wealthy lords of southern France held lavish courts filled with exotic musicians, travellers, and thinkers of every kind, from philosophers, inventors, artists, and healers. Languedoc, the land of wine and song, was incredibly wealthy in riches and culture, making it a perfect place for the spread of Catharism. In the beginning of the 13th century, Languedoc was home to around 1,500 Cathar Parfaits, also known as Cathar Perfects. The number of Cathar believers is unknown. It could range in the thousands to the millions. The Cathar, having already settled in southern France for 100 years, had left the families of southern France a mixture of Cathar and Catholic, living in harmony. The Cathar were known to teach the poor how to read and write, even teaching the common folk how to read the Bible and teaching women how to paint, of which both of these things were illegal and outlawed by the Roman Catholic Church. The Cathar were also known for their free healing and giving medicine to the poor. Because of this, they were considered just and holy by the local Catholic community. Proof of this can be found in a statement made by a minor lord and knight, Pons Adama, initially before the crusade, when asked by Fulk, Bishop of Toulouse, why he refused to expel heretics from his land. He replied, "We cannot. Many of them are relatives, and we can see their way of life is virtuous." When Innocent III became Pope in 1198, he immediately took steps to combat Catharism due to its growing popularity and the Cathar calling out church and the previous pope's corruption. Pope Innocent III sent legates to southern France with orders to preach the gospel, to induce fear of hellfire, and to debate with Cathar perfects, and to convert the local Cathar, with no success. Count Raymond of Toulouse was not willing to force people out from their homes. He also despised the Pope's interference into his lands and domain. This would have also angered the local barons and minor lords and nobility, which wished to remain independent, viewing the Pope as a tyrant. Pope Not So Innocent III, now angry and fed up with the denial from the local lords to persecute the lands and kill the Cathar, the Pope excommunicated Count Raymond. This meaning he would be denied a Catholic burial and be denied church services like communion. He could also be put on trial and could be attacked. In 1208, Count Raymond tried gaining absolution to lift his excommunication and met with the Pope's legate, Peter of Castile. However, the discussion turned south and Count Raymond threw out the legate and threatened to watch him everywhere he went. The next morning, Legate Peter was killed, and his killer was never found. Pope Innocent quickly blamed Count Raymond for the murder, to which Raymond denied any involvement or having any knowledge of the murder. Whether or not Raymond ordered his men to kill Legate Peter, or if the Pope orchestrated the whole event, Pope Innocent III now had a reason to claim the local lords were defending heretics and launched the crusade. Pope Innocent III proceeded to tax the French Church to fund an army and appointed Chief Legate Abbot Arnaud Amory in charge of recruiting to increase the army size as customary for crusaders. Pope Innocent III would seize high taxes of anyone who joined and delayed repayments on debts to any crusader. Pope Innocent III would then start the propaganda claim. He would claim the past crusaders failed due to the weakening of Christendom, due to inside threats of heresy, and in order for Christianity to become strong again and strong enough to defend itself, it must kill the eternal sickness. The unfortunate victims of this case would be the Cathar. As the Pope Not So Innocent III, ordered the crusade against the Cathar, known as the Albigensian Crusade. In June 1209, Count Raymond became alarmed of the large sight of the great army gathering. Raymond travelled to St. Giles Abbey, to where he would openly confess to all the Pope's charges laid against him, including harbouring and supporting heretics. Raymond then submitted to a whipping by a papal legate. He was forgiven by the Pope and told to join the crusade and Arnaud's army, and in exchange his lands would not be attacked. The first target of the crusade was the domain of Raymond Roger, the nephew of Count Raymond VI. The lands of Béziers and Carcassonne had a heavy Cathar population. In July 1209, Roger, 24 at the time, tried negotiating peace, claiming he was a loyal member of the church, and tried disclaiming the responsibility of the Cathar growth in his lands due to his youth. His peace talks were denied, and the Crusaders marched and attacked the city of Béziers. Roger tried to hurry back to Carcassonne to prepare its defences, but simultaneously Carcassonne was attacked by Archbishop of Bordeaux, whom already took the city, and had many accused heretics burnt alive, Cathar and Catholic alike. The Crusaders, led by Legate Arnaud, captured the small village of Servien before marching onto the city of Béziers. The inhabitants trusted the city's defences and chose to stay within the city walls. The local lords, believing this was a political war for land, disguised as a religious war, chose to defend their lands and their people. The city of Béziers had a population of 85,000, of which 700 were Cathar. The chief legate Arnaud demanded for the inhabitants to give up the heretics. When they refused, the city was attacked and fell. A mass slaughter then followed the city's fall. 20,000 people were killed. Several Cathar were killed, praying in front of their altars, in their churches, and outside of their churches. It was reported when Amalric was asked by his knights and commanders how to tell the difference between Cathar and Catholic. Amalric, chief legate, responded, "Kill them all. God will know his own." Raymond Roger was then placed in his own dungeon and held there until his death a few months later. The citizens of Carcassonne surrendered after many people were burnt as heretics. Because the city surrendered, the Cathar within its walls were spared execution, but were stripped naked, mocked and spat on, similar to Jesus. And then they were exiled from their homes. Weird how Christians have bullied people in the ancient past in the way Jesus was treated, but do the opposite of his teachings. The next battle centered around Les Tours and the castle of Cabaret. In December 1209, Piri Roger de Cabaret seized the fighting, and due to harsh winter conditions and due to only having a small number of soldiers for the defence, while Simon de Montfort was concentrating on his newly gained territory he had gained. New troops and crusaders eventually arrived to continue the siege, and in March 1210, Bram surrendered the city, and in June, the well-fortified city of Minerve was besieged. The city of Minerve was chosen by Simon to be attacked due to a large number of Cathar perfects living there. It was said that Simon initially wanted to treat the Cathar well and try to convert them to Catholicism, but was constantly pressured by the Pope to punish them. The city of Minerve surrendered after suffering heavy bombardments and being low on water. The Catholic inhabitants and the defenders of the city were spared. Some Cathar were also spared, but any Cathar perfect or Cathar suspected of being a priest or priestess would be burnt alive. 143 Cathar perfects were offered to convert or die. 3 women renounced Catharism and converted to Catholicism out of fear and torture, while the other 140 would be burnt alive. Some Cathar, men and women, after seeing their loved ones, walked into the flames, not awaiting their executioner. In August 1210, the crusade continued to the stronghold of Termes. Its owner, Raymond de Termes, who refused to surrender, choosing to defend the Cathar and his people. Though the defenders were unable to break the siege, heavy rainstorms on November 22nd, 1210 gave the Cathar the opportunity to escape. By the time operations of the crusade continued in 1211, the actions of cruelty towards not only the Cathar, but towards other Catholics, and the actions of hostility towards the local lords of southern France, committed by Arnaud Amaury and Simon de Montfort, had alienated several important lords from their cause, including Count Raymond de Toulouse, who had been excommunicated again. The Crusaders returned in force to Les Tours, and in March, Piri Roger de Cabaret soon agreed to surrender. In April 1211, de Montfort laid siege to Navarre. As the siege continued, new troops arriving all over Europe were ordered to go to Lavar, but on their way they were ambushed in the village of Montgey by troops sent by Tullius, led by Raymond Roger, the Count of Foix, and his son Roger Bernard. Many of the Catholic town citizens and the local peasants, and even some Cathar, who were initially non-violent, helped the defenders ambush the Crusaders. All but one of the Crusader army was killed. The Cathar, though initially non-violent, mostly helped during the battle with medical treatment. In May, the castle of Aymery de Monteril was retaken by the Crusaders, and Aymery and his senior knights were hanged for defending the Cathar, while several hundred or over 1,000 Cathar were burnt alive. Then in June, the city of Casses fell. Simon Montfort then marched towards Montferrand, where Raymond of Toulouse had placed his brother Baldwin in command. After a short siege, Baldwin signed an agreement to abandon the fort and to promise by oath not to fight against the Crusaders. Baldwin briefly returned to his brother before defecting back to the Crusaders and remaining loyal to them from then on. After the Crusaders took Montferrand, they then started to siege Toulouse, but for once the attackers were short on supplies and men, forcing Simon de Montfort to withdraw. Raymond VI Toulouse, the sixth, becoming emboldened by the withdrawal of Montfort's crusading force, led his own force to attack the forces of Montfort. During Raymond's attack, a force of crusaders arrived to support Simon Montfort, though only barely being able to beat back Raymond's forces, allowing Montfort to break free of the assault and forcing Raymond to withdraw. Montfort then cut off Raymond Toulouse from his allies by promising the local cities if they don't support Raymond, he won't burn and loot their cities, effectively lowering Raymond's income and loyalty of his vassals. To repel the invaders, the Cathar and Count Raymond turned to Peter II, Raymond's overlord and King of Aragon, for assistance. King Peter II had been crowned king by Pope Innocent III and was a seasoned warlord, warrior, battle commander, and defender of the Christian faith, known for defeating the Muslim Moors. His sister was married to Raymond Toulouse, making them also allies. King Peter II was able to use his prestige of his victories over the Muslims, along with a delegation sent to Rome, to have the Pope Innocent III halt the crusade. Pope Innocent III trusted King Peter II and was hoping to end the Albigensian crusade, believing the Cathar had been dealt with, and wanted to begin a new crusade against the Muslim Moors. On the 15th of January 1213, Pope Innocent III wrote to Arnaud, the papal legate and now the newly appointed Bishop of Narbonne, as well as to Simon Montfort, condemning their attacks on fellow Catholics and ordered Simon to return the lands he had taken. Pope Innocent III also removed the crusade funding and demanded that Simon and his legates hold council and listen to King Peter and then report their feelings to him. King Peter II petitioned the clergy at the Council of Laval to restore Count Raymond's lands, arguing that Count Raymond was ready to repent, and if this was acceptable, the land should be returned to him. If it was unacceptable, the lands could be placed in the hands of Raymond's son, while Raymond went on crusade or until he came of age. The council rejected King Peter's recommendation, refusing to absolve Raymond, and insisted his lands still harbour heretics. King Peter II rejected the council's verdict, concerned that Simon Montfort had grown too powerful. He decided to come to the aid of Toulouse alongside others who were against Simon. These actions alarmed Pope Innocent III, who, after hearing Simon's delegation, denounced Peter and renewed the Albigensian crusade. On the 21st of May, Pope Innocent III wrote to King Peter II a letter threatening him with excommunication and warned him not to fight against the Crusaders. On the 12th of September, King Peter's troops would engage Simon Montfort's troops in the Battle of Muret. King Peter II's army consisted of 2,000 cavalry and around 2,000 to 4,000 infantry, outnumbering Simon Montfort's 900 cavalry and 1,000 infantry. The first of the Crusader lines had been beaten back early in the battle, but despite being heavily outnumbered, Simon concentrated his attack on Peter's main force, killing King Peter II in battle. In the confusion, the forces of King Peter fled, allowing Simon's forces to occupy northern Toulouse. Simon Montfort, now owning most of Count Raymond's lands, Raymond VI and his son Raymond VII were forced to flee to England. Despite all this, the citizens of Languedoc fiercely rebelled against Simon's rule, to which he dismantled the city's walls and forced the citizens to swear an oath of loyalty to him. In April 1216, Count Raymond returned to the region with his son Raymond VII and quickly gathered a substantial force from all the towns displeased with Simon's rule. Raymond VII, Count Raymond VI's son, was not like his moderately timid father. He was a bold, cunning, decisive, gifted battle commander. Because of his charisma, many rallied to his cause. Pope Innocent III suddenly died, and southern France cheered in joy. On September 13, 1217, Raymond VI, with a force of knights, entered the now unfortified Toulouse city, and immediately the local citizens threw out Simon Montfort's representatives and proclaimed Raymond the true ruler of the land. And out of defiance, every citizen, old and young, woman, man, and child, constructed a new wall out of the local timber and earthworks to prepare the city for another attack, all while singing. Simon immediately tried retaking the city, but many of his soldiers were starting to defect to Raymond's and the Cathar cause. Toulouse was now the centre of a final effort to expel the invaders. The new Pope, Honorius III, demanded an end to the rebellion and for the lords of southern France to recognise Simon's rule, which was rejected. And in the spring of 1218, Pope Honorius III renewed the Albigensian crusade. On June 25th or the 29th, 1218, Simon de Montfort was struck on the head and killed by defensive siege equipment operated by the town women. With Simon's death and a whoop whoop for the girls, the long bitter invasion seemed to be over, but the war was not finished yet. In 1218, Aymery, the son of Simon Montfort, assumed leadership of the Albigensian crusade. By 1220, the Crusaders, led by Aymery Montfort, held only a small amount of territory that was reduced down to the amount that was captured during the first 2 years of the crusade. 11 long hard years had now gone by. In 1222, Count Raymond VI died of illness and is still currently excommunicated. In 1998, an appeal was made and the Pope then rejected it. Count Raymond's son, Raymond VII, who was more popular and a better military leader, rallied the nobility around himself as their new leader. In January 1226, the French monarchy finally intervened. King Louis VIII of France took the cross and gathered a large army, the largest force the Cathar had ever seen. On September the 9th, Louis's army captured the city of Avignon. Nearly all of Toulouse declared loyalty to the King of France. The town surrendered after being paid 6,000 marks to destroy their city walls. No killing or looting took place. King Louis, initially ending the crusade, died a month later, and his son, still a child, took the throne, and the Queen Regent continued the crusade, ending it in 1229 on the 12th of April with a treaty. The Albigensian crusade itself may have ended up removing the old royal elite and the House of Toulouse, now married into the French royal family. The Cathar, however, still remained. However, the lands were now under strict Roman Catholic control, and the Church was able to focus its effort to future persecution of the Gnostic Christians called the Cathar. By 1233, the Inquisition was formed in Toulouse, and by 1250, Cathar leadership was oppressed, and by the 14th century, the Cathar were wiped out. Some survived underground and in hiding. The genocide of the Cathar is considered a genocide by the coiner of the word genocide, Raphael Lemkin, and by all Gnostics and by many scholars today. Catharism survives on in the modern day.